see we've got Mark Goodwin back. Mark, do you wanna come on, join our call here?
Hello. What's going on, everybody?
Hanging out, man. How are you doing today?
Oh, so good. Yeah, beautiful day in the extended Bay Area. Nice and warm and sunny. So just been yeah, out with the dog, walking around, getting some real metaverse in before settling in here with you guys.
Oh, I'm jealous, man. That sounds nice. Real world sounds nice. That's why we accumulate that Bitcoin so we can afford more real world time later.
Uh,
I
how's your day going?
My day's going great, man. Yeah, we're here going live. We're talking about. I'm laughing at Jack Dorsey's recent tweets. I'm double down maxi today. Like there's some days where I just hold Bitcoin and other days where I feel more like a quote Bitcoiner. But today I'm feeling pretty toxic because I think there are several attacks on what is good and right and light and good in this space, and I think they need to be addressed. And if I'm going to go live and talk about Bitcoin, we ought to be the ones to address them. So how you feeling? How's your toxicity doing these days?
You know, I definitely am a water's warm. Oh my, hello. I'm definitely a water's warm maximalist. I think that's the best way to do it for sure. But at the same time, when people are sort of perpetuating, just literal misinformation and lies about, decentralization or whatnot. Yeah, I mean, there's an absolute necessity for the truth, and if that is going to be labeled as toxic, then hey, that's on them. But I think the truth will win out and will play out. So yeah, I'm feeling kind of toxic today. I enjoying last night. I thought Twitter was really on fire. There was like
Oh my God.
just so much really, really good stuff that, just a lot of conversations that needed to happen, and a lot of honesty that needs to be sort of instilled in the space. So I was pretty happy to see it going down like that for sure.
Yeah, if y'all are tuning in from YouTube and Twitch, and that's kind of your platform of choice, almost recommend just stay there, man. Twitter's its own special kind of fire that's never going to be put out. But there's a whole lot of information to be had there. There's a whole lot of signal there too. So make sure you follow Bitcoin Magazine, follow Mark, get some good signal. Follow me on Twitter. We'll try to get you some good pure signal.
Yeah, definitely. I thought it's nice to see. I mean, I think Jack has always been Jack, and I think he will always be Jack. And I don't think that, any of the CEO stepping down stuff is really truly affecting what he's talking about. I think he's going to say what he wants to say. So I think that narrative is a little bunk. But yeah, seeing him kind of unload on some of these Web3 narratives of, I mean, it's just, I'm getting toxic. Let's get into this.
Yeah.
Some of the
Let's show the first tweet. I'll read it to you, Mark, because I don't know if you can see it, but the first tweet, Jack at 11 p.m. last night, Jack decided before bed to say, "You don't own Web3." And this is just a much more assertive Jack that we haven't seen since he stepped down from Twitter, which makes me so happy that he stepped down as CEO of Twitter, that he can start unleashing on these mofos. So he says, "You don't own Web3. The venture capitalists and their limited partners do. It will never escape their incentives. It's ultimately a centralized entity with a different label. Know what you're getting into." Mic drop from Jack Dorsey. Love it.
1,000%. And yeah, I think that there's just a big falsehood about, ownership on these centralized chains and what that really means. And I think people should do what they want to do. And if you want to participate in a network, like I'm not going to get angry at anybody if they want to invest in Twitter or Facebook stock or whatever. If you want to invest in a social network, go for it. But I think that the false advertising from these groups that they're building this decentralized platform when they're just not, and literally saying that this stuff is sound money or ultrasound money when it's just fundamentally not even remotely in the same category. I mean, and then you look at some of these breakdowns of who owns the shares of this stuff and who owns the there's a humongous difference in proof of work and proof of stake. And one of the main things is the centralization of governance. And when you have a consensus model that it has compounding shares, like a proof of stake model, like a Solana or Ether, any of these things, these VC coins, they get more and more governance power as time goes on, and they get more and more control of the system. They have more censorship, more ability to, to just, it's a LARP that these systems are decentralized, or that you have an ownership over a JPEG or whatever. And yeah, I just think it's really insincere to, to push that you're building these for the people infrastructures, when it's like, no, you're creating systems for these VCs to just, unload their pre-mined liquidity on unassuming
greater fools.
Right. And a lot of them are really good people. A lot of them are friends of mine, not the builders of these things, but, I have a lot of friends that, they like a lot of that stuff. And, you gotta hit them with love and be kind and sweet and be like, no, the water's warm. We all came into this space and didn't know what to do. And a lot of us bought altcoins and all that stuff. And then, we grokked and we saw the light. And it's not because we're bitter or toxic or, we're maxis or any of this stuff, whatever the du jour condescension term. It's because we've really actually understood the difference. And we're not here to pump VC's bags. We're here to, dematerialize central banking, not recreate it on the internet, That's how I look at it.
Yeah, it's important to point out that I'm not keen on the Bitcoin price in US dollars going up. Like we addressed earlier in the show, I don't know if you caught this, Mark, but we were talking about how Bitcoin is not a Ponzi scheme. That's a very amateur argument that people make when they come into the space, because they don't understand that my number doesn't go up because I denominate in Bitcoin. The only way my number goes up is if I put in the work and raise, the local currency and swap to Bitcoin or get paid in Bitcoin for real work that I put in to real projects in my life. Like there's no other way to acquire it. If you join Bitcoin, it doesn't do anything for me. It's not 2009 anymore. You and your family joining the network and all of your friends doesn't change my position a dime. I mean,
yeah, no, totally. I've seen some cool, little digs on that where like Marty Bent was saying, every 10 minutes is a new all-time high on Bitcoin. Block height goes up and TikTok, and that's really all that matters. And I agree. It's like there's so many fundamentals underlying to Bitcoin that have nothing to do with US dollar denominated purchasing power. And I do think that there is a much to be said about appreciation of US dollar denominated purchasing power as being something that brings eyes to Bitcoin, strengthens the ability for this is something that I think that doesn't get necessarily talked about a lot, is that, we are economic nodes, right? And it doesn't matter how many nodes are on the system. If we learned anything from, the user activated soft fork and the block size war is, like I could start a fork of Bitcoin and run 100 million nodes on my computer that has no economic activity. And it wouldn't do a darn. It wouldn't be a more, prolific or stronger chain. It would just be another useless, altcoin. And so like we are all, economic nodes. And I just think that there's a lot of, misunderstanding about the underlying, fundamentals of Bitcoin in terms of, just a lot of focus on number go up, and it's important to bringing people on, but not necessarily like that's the end game here. And I think, Bitcoin is a means to an end, and what we're trying to do is a much bigger thing than just make money. And if you want to make money, then maybe if I can swear on here, maybe the shitcoin for you.
Please do.
Maybe the shitcoin casino is for you if that's what you're here to do. And don't get me wrong, I'm excited about some of the stuff that's going on. The appreciation I've seen over the last 4 and change years has been wonderful and has affected my life, greatly. But I also, it's not like I've just been liquidating and buying, useless fiat things that I don't need. It's like, oh, the more the US dollar denominated purchasing power of Bitcoin goes up, the more I can give to my kids, and my kids can give to their kids, and I can gift to my brothers and my family. And, you know,
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
We had a quote along these lines that I really like from Kylo in the YouTube. He says, Web 2.0, you are the product. Web 3.0, you are the exit liquidity for the pre-mine. I couldn't agree more. I mean, that's might be the only good working definition of Web 3 that we have. This is not a tangible thing, and this is also not an abstract concept that one can easily define. I've seen it used to refer to like completely different asset classes. Is it the metaverse? I mean, let's start there. I don't even know what Web3 is.
I
I
mean,
mean,
it's a rebranding of ICOs. I mean, legitimately, some of them are the same ICOs from 2017 and from that huge boom, and they just now they're like supposedly Web3. I mean, ETH is, one of the main Web3, VC coins chains. And I mean, it's been rebranded so many times, it has no idea what it's trying to be. So this idea that there are defenders of what Web3 is when it doesn't even know what it is, I think it's really confusing, for sure. Really, really confusing.
let's dig in to notable Web3 proponent, kind of like altcoin guy, Eric Voorhees, who's always digging in on something. He responded to Jack's initial tweet that we just talked about. He said, saying you don't own Web3 because VCs own some of it is like saying you don't control your Bitcoin because VCs also control some. Do you want to? I see you shaking your head. Break that down for me. What's everything wrong with that statement?
He's too smart, and he's been around Bitcoin too long. I don't know him at all, and but I don't really care to burn a bridge. But he's too smart to know that that's not true. Like proof of stake and these VC coins, there's a governance aspect to how much you hold, and so when the humongous difference between the governance of Bitcoin and proof of stake is that in Bitcoin there's a universal forgetful function. So at the end of the day, anyone that's on the network and is mining, yes, the more equipment you have, the better chance you have, statistically of winning. But it doesn't matter if you won the last 1,000 blocks. You're just as likely to win the next block as someone who has as many miners as you. There's no continuity. There's no consistency. And so to say that, VCs own Bitcoin and that's the same, but they don't have influence over the consensus algorithm. By holding more Bitcoin, by a Max Kaiser or a Winklevoss or any of these guys that have these huge sums of Bitcoin, they have no more power over the consensus than I do. And that's simply not true in proof of stake systems. Proof of stake systems use a sort of like a lottery system of validation where you get more tickets in the lottery to be the person that wins that gets to validate the next block. And so if you have more stake, you have more chances of being a validator and being the person that, layers these transactions in a timestamp. So Bitcoin is a decentralized timestamp server, which solves the digital double spend, right? So digital scarcity means nothing if you can spend it as many times as you want. It doesn't matter how little Bitcoins they are. If I can send the same Bitcoin to Chris, to Alex, to CK, to whatever, it simply doesn't matter. But so there's a decentralized timestamp server that is immutable truth that can be sent out in a decentralized way that everyone can see, okay, this UTXO got spent. This is where it went. It can't be spent again, yada, yada. Proof of stake, that validation is literally just a lottery based on your, the amount of ETH or whatever that you hold. And so it just gets distributed that way. And it's, the more of these things that you have, you have a better chance of having influence over the governance. And that's, let me just do this a little bit. And that influence over the governance is compounding, with these proof of stake models that have yields. So as that, whatever 6.5% yield or whatever on, say, like an ETH.2, if that ever ships, you get more and more compounding governance and more potential influence over the network as things go on. It's exceptionally different than Bitcoin. Voorhees knows this. He should know that. It's pretty ridiculous to be saying something like that in basically 2022. And I'm, all due respect, but sometimes the due respect is not a lot when you're saying things that just aren't, true of how the consensus algorithm works and in these chains.
This is something that's interested me. So are we saying that some of these actors, Vitalik, Voorhees, like they're choosing negligence for profit? Or do you think, they know and they're bad actors, they just don't understand, they're confused, right? Like, how do you know at the end of the day? It's hard to say, right?
Don't. And that's the thing where intentions, we can't take anyone at their word for their intentions at this point when it comes to money, and what we have to do is take them at the incentive structures that they build. And if you're building an incentive structure that rewards, a VC pre-mine that you have, more power over the system, and you're perpetuating it with a marketing team, you're using money from an ICO to literally advertise about the future profits and future use cases that aren't even designed or scalable. You have to sort of judge them on that. And I don't necessarily think these people are bad people. I mean, I don't know any of them. But the systems that they've created certainly create incentive structures that are much more aligned with a lot of the failures of central banking and these centralized power structures. And yet they're marketed in this very disingenuous way. That's not to say that there aren't people on these platforms that are good people or that are utilizing them in good ways. Like, I'm sure that there are really nice people in those communities. But again, what is the incentive structure of these proof of stake models? You look at something like a Solana or something, and it's just like, how could you in good faith invest in this system when a humongous amount of it is literally owned by these VCs and these old legacy establishment, incumbent power structures that we're trying to avoid, being under their sort of umbrella by creating a decentralized economic system, right? So
yeah, I would point out that you gotta question your own incentives, right? What are you here for? I'm here for a property assurance, and it's not even one that's based on trust. I'm here to verify that the property I own today will continue to be the property I own tomorrow, and that's Bitcoin. That's why I wear, Bitcoin versus the world. It's not about this like asset versus another asset. It's about I think this is the strongest form of property, and I think it can solve a lot of problems or give us a tremendous like foothold and make giant leaps towards solving a lot of like humanitarian issues. And so we have to rally around Bitcoin and against these Web3s and these other cryptos. Also, shout out on that sweater. That's from lmtdsupply.co if you guys want some great Bitcoin swag.
love it. Yeah, no, I totally agree. And again, I don't think that necessarily, I think when we sink to these levels and we get in the mud with some of these folks and we sling poop with them and we, say bad words and things, it's very easy for these people that have incentives or investments that they're trying to defend in these programs. It's very easy for them to point at it and say, oh, a toxic maximalist. And so I really urge people to not get into the mud and get to ad hominem stuff, even though it's probably well deserved, but you're actually doing a disservice to, as you said, like the verifiable, immutable truth that is Bitcoin versus the sort of we don't know what, ETH doesn't know what ETH's, monetary policy.
Yeah.
Whereas known since even before the Bitcoin network launched in 2008, around Halloween 2008, we knew what the supply issuance structure would be, from the get-go. So it's it's predictable issuance, that's really what you want when it comes to everything else is kind of irrelevant. It's the predictability that's
Yeah, I would say it's important probably not to fall into, although it can be fun, these traps of getting in arguments, study up on your logic. I know I sure could use uh, a refresher course on logic and just how to argue because I'm terrible at it.
Read your
But
rhetoric.
yeah, but there's no listen, the as far as I can tell, Bitcoin is the only like distributed, decentralized form of truth that we can agree on. Like, people say, the left or the right, this side or that side, Bitcoin or crypto, like they all claim to have the truth, but Bitcoin is the only truth that we're expending energy as a globe to uphold that you can look back at and say, these are the facts. This is what happened. This is what took place. This is what is taking place now. And this is what's in the mempool. This is what's about to take place shortly in the future, most likely. Like these are the only facts that we've agreed upon. Everything else is built on top of that. And again, it's just there's no other form of history on the planet that isn't heavily biased or that could be, represented in a different way. I mean, Bitcoin's all we've got in terms of objective truths, as far as I can tell. I don't know
100%.
what you think about that, but
Totally. It is, that's why it really upsets me so much with a lot of the energy FUD, because it's like, it's a waste of energy. It's like, first off, it's going to de-incentivize wasting energy. And, it's going to completely cheapen and bring down energy costs with a free market if we do it right. But also, it's like the expression of volatility between two parties, having an immutable decentralized hash string consensus of immutability of volatility
mhm.
between parties rather is such an important thing. I mean, to have a pure history that's incorruptible is something that we've never had before. And yeah, I mean, history goes to the victors, right? So I think we've all learned a ton in the last couple of years and in the last so many years of how much just gaslighting and literal just like corrupted truth is being presented as facts from the media, from politicians, from nation states, from banks, from spoofing markets. All of these things. We just see so much just literal lies and corruption, and there's definitely lies and corruption in the Bitcoin space. Of course, there's people, anyone can do what they want with it. That it's for enemies as well. And there are people that are charlatans and sell things that don't exist and yada yada. Like that is true, of course. But the actual consensus in the base layer is a really important technological advancement in decentralized truth. I mean, solving the Byzantine generals problem is a computer science solution that's incredibly important. And to be able to, express truth uncorruptibly in a public, decentralized, peer-to-peer way is so important. And there's no waste being used in securing that ledger. Nothing is wasted. It's such an important advancement for human expression and volatility. So yeah, I totally agree. Our history has been, I mean, I don't know how you don't question so many things going on in history. What just from, I'm a 90s kid. So, I remember when, 9/11 happened and I, all of the gaslighting going on there and how here we are now. And I'm not trying to get super political, but it's just, we've just been lied to about whether there were weapons of mass destruction, blah, 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 the
Yeah,
mission report. And here we are. And it's just, well, what else have we been lied to about? I wrote
yeah.
something in one of my latest articles. It was like the greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world that 2% compounding inflation is normal. Like hyper normalized in this unbelievable corrupt world where we've just been lied and stolen from for so long. And Bitcoin is
It's
something that we actually kind of have some control, where we at least can own something for once.
the I'd agree with you there. Also, 90s kid. I would say like 9/11, first time in my lifetime that I think I can look back at that and say, oh, the government never had our best interests at heart. Not only that, but they've also convinced the population to stop questioning the reality that they live in. And that kind of brings me to our third final quote. I mean, because we still don't have answers to 9/11. We're never going to have answers. This isn't really a 9/11 focused chat, but it points to, like, if you think the government has your best interests in mind, you're insane. Um, these are people with, just like you and me, who are susceptible to, I mean, flaws. Not that there isn't a path to redemption for each of these government officials, but in some cases, I mean, look, they're susceptible to just mindless self-indulgence and upholding power structures that promote their own production and defeat the destruction, whatever can perpetuate their sort of abilities to central plan the world around them. That's what's gonna remain popular, and that they're gonna try to keep in vogue. So the next quote comes from Chad Hurley. He says these fuckers are arguing about different webs in the same simulation. And again, we're talking about Web3 and the Twitter spats that arose last night that Jack Dorsey, ex-CEO, got in on. So he says they're arguing about different webs in the same simulation. And Jack came back, brilliant clapback, just says charlats only. And what he's referring to is our own reality. This is the only simulation. Web3 doesn't offer you anything fundamentally different from what we're already experienced. I mean, I don't know if you guys have taken a peek at the metaverse or metaverse commercials. It looks like Wii Sports from like 2005. Like, I'm not going in there. There's not enough pixels in that world.
Yeah. And I think, I think the interconnectivity of the internet protocol stack is a fundamental, humongous influence on our species at a really like fundamental level. And the comparison I like to use is, if you took away, a bee, a hive of bees' ability to communicate with pheromones and have this sort of almost like psychic hive mind ability, you wouldn't have the structures that they have. They're very specific roles that, okay, you're this, you're the drone, I'm the queen, I'm this. They wouldn't have those structures. They would be an incredibly different species, and they would interact and work very, very differently. And right now, again, as we were 90s kids, we remember getting the internet. Like, I got the internet. That was the thing that happened. Like, my family got the internet. That's not, the kids these days, that's not something that they necessarily, they just had it. They grew up with it. They were raised by the algorithms. They were a part of they were plugged in from the get-go. And I think that that's not all bad. I think there's so much beauty in being connected to the world and all of the information of humanity. The fact that we're able to talk right now, just, literally just us, but then everyone else that's watching and communicating. And I think there's so much beauty there. But yeah, I think a lot of the, this sort of like fascination of the rebranding of this stuff that we already have, as if it's this decentralized thing, when actually it's actually way more centralized, and you're creating way more structures and corruptible choke points. Yeah, I mean, I definitely do subscribe to some of the simulation theory stuff for sure. But yeah, I think Web3 is just marketing. It's just branding. And I think it's not necessarily dangerous. I just think it's sort of ludicrous to think that, how much have we learned about Facebook? Do we really think that, they have our best interests and they're trying to design this cool world for everyone to have a place? But it's like, no, they're probably, their beginnings had a lot of, military background and all this stuff. I mean, it's not, the story that we're given is just kind of disingenuous. And
I'd like to point out that it's taken Facebook 13 years and I'm still waiting for an ICO. They have not figured out how to make their own cryptocurrency or even copy paste Bitcoin, let alone implement Bitcoin. It's so sad, really. Diem, Libra, all these total failure on every front.
I was really surprised actually that they didn't do that. And I know that they have just launched their wallet. So I'm curious to see what they're going to do there, just as sort of like a, almost in like a hobbyist way. But yeah, it's just strange to me that we would want to centralize a lot of the beauty of the openness of HTML and the World Wide Web. And I actually went to high school with Tim Berners-Lee's daughter, and it's kind of interesting. And like, I think that there's so much unbelievable beauty in the internet and the sort of like, the true empowerment of these decentralized stacks. I'm so thankful for the internet every day. I use it every day. It connects me with amazing people. It gives me platforms to write. Why would we want to rebrand that and put it and tokenize it with a token that's 70% owned by VC? I mean, it doesn't make sense. And
I think, well, first of all, guys, don't forget, a lot of people are watching this stream, which is pretty exciting this time around. Please like and subscribe, but also let us know, what do you think about Web3? Get into it with us. This is a very interactive show. We're happy to, I see Guy Mogul going off. We'll let Eastside Tony and Chris talk to that, guys. There's some very specific questions, but for the most part, we're happy to air your questions if they're good questions and talk about them. What do you think about Web3? Yeah, don't forget to like and subscribe. I would say, I just wanted to touch on the simulation argument a minute. Like, if there was something that would help us if we were in an ancestral simulation, either get to a point in technological like history where we could deploy simulations, or help us realize the simulation that we are within. If you believe that, or if you find that to be true, it would be Bitcoin, because it's the only thing that can transform like this physical realm energy into digital energy in a way that's verifiable, decentralized, in a way that we can all harness and send around this energy in a way that no one ever could before. So I think it's gonna do a lot to reallocate capital towards science that is actually useful, as opposed to much of the useless science. Like, you'll notice how suddenly seems the whole world of science has turned to vaccine research, when we know that's not a good use of time or resources, or even the truth. I mean, there's plenty of scientists who are still working on important problems that we just won't hear from, because they're all government funded. Like, look into it. I mean, all of your university courses and all the research, and the margin of error for this research is just widening and widening, because it's all backed by central planning. It's all backed by the tentacles of the U.S. government, and there's an inherent bias in everything that's happening out there. So you really gotta reduce down, in my opinion, back to something decentralized and something that you can point to and say that's true, and then we start from there. And that thing would be Bitcoin.
Yeah, I think you really nailed it, especially talking about science community and academia. We've created a cathedral, an ancestral cathedral, with an incentive structure that literally incentivizes you to perpetuate the status quo, whether it's academic, whether it's science. I mean, it's scientism. It's this very strange, sort of religious cult sort of thing. And I think people do say Bitcoin can kind of be like that too. And I kind of agree. But when you have incentive structures that literally, pay smart people to not think outside the box and not break down these things. And we've turned science into being, a mindless acceptance of what's gone before, instead of literally innately within the scientific model, sound skepticism. So it's really strange that our incentive structures have changed like that. It pays literally to perpetuate status quo rather than rock the boat. And I think that's something that a proof of stake system or a Web3 system does, is it's going to literally incentivize you to continue your stake and perpetuate these incentive structures rather than
comply.
Right.
Yeah. We have not to cut you off, but we had a question I didn't see from Rain Dalton. I hope you're still here. He says he's new to crypto. Can you, in a sentence, summarize what Web3 is? I think that's a fair ask if we're going to spend this much time talking about it. How would we define Web3, Mark, if I can put you on the spot?
Sure. It is a marketing rebranding of the ICO boom of 2017. It is a genius remarketing of closed systems, LARPing as open systems, in order to make money for the marketing teams that are behind the incentive structures that we've just talked about. I
It's
don't
a
know.
Ponzi scheme. I want to yeah, shout out to our amazing producer Chris in the comments taking care of that question. Guys, like and subscribe for Chris and share this stream. Appreciate having y'all here. Let's go on to our next quote. I hope this, for some reason it's rendering upside down for me, but this is from Elon Musk commenting on Web3 and Jack clapping back in a funny way. Let's see what they said. We got Elon saying, I can't find Web3. Has anyone seen it? To which Jack responds, ooh, what does he say here? I lost this.
It was somewhere between A and Z.
A and Z, somewhere between A and Z. All right. Well, they're clearly making fun of it as well. So there you have it. Elon Musk is not on board with Web3.
Yeah. And, you know, I think that quote is kind of funny because I think it's sort of a two-pronged attack. One, obviously making fun of the A16Z venture capitalist fund that's behind, you know, a lot of this.
I did not even catch that. That's brilliant. You're right.
And the other side is that it is, in my opinion, also making fun of Amazon. Their logo is, you know, the A to Z with the little arrow, and that I think it's also poking fun at the fact that all of these decentralized structures with like 20 nodes are all running on Amazon Web Services. And if, you know, if anyone wanted to shut these things down, they, you know, the DoD or whatever would simply have to just go to AWS servers and say, stop, put that down. And we've seen AWS servers go down multiple times in the last few months, and significant outages. The Bitcoin has not gone down at all. You know?
Oh boy, if you're holding ETH right now in the audience, you're probably sweating. I hope. I mean, good. I mean, you need it. You need to learn from these malinvestments that we've all made. I've been there too. But if your property is at the subject of Vitalik, his friends, Amazon Web Services, this is a completely centralized entity. All of these cryptocurrencies outside of Bitcoin are. They're centralized and they're dependent on servers that can go down at any moment or be confiscated. Like, you're gonna lose all your property someday. It's happened. It will continue to happen. It's not good. It's not good. Yeah. Eastside Tony says at least it's better than the Federal Reserve's one node. That's hilarious. I will kindly, I agree with you on the surface, but I'll kindly posit that the Federal Reserve has all kinds of nodes. They're in your school systems, they're bank branches, they're all over their ATMs. The Federal Reserve is all over the place, man.
Yeah, true. You really can't. I think there's a fundamental thing. You can't really remove token issuance from security and from the governance model. And you know, people love. You know, there was that Wall Street Journal article a couple days ago that was like, 0.1% of the network owns 20% of the Bitcoin. Like, first off, that's still better than fiat, literally. But secondly, you're looking at exchanges, you're looking at sort of like hypothecary situations, you're looking at, wallets that are actually owned by, the Bitcoin is technically owned by all the people using them. Now, that said, get your coins off exchanges. The whole point of Bitcoin is that it is actually something that you can own. And if you haven't done the work to learn to hold your keys, you really haven't understood Bitcoin. And I think just buying Bitcoin on a centralized exchange, while it might protect you from inflationary monetary expansion, you're not actually protecting yourself from the trustlessness and the unseizability of Bitcoin, of what it offers. And that's a humongous part of the use case of it. So these pre-mined, I mean, if your protocol had a pre-mine, if your protocol, there was a control P and it created the tokens that represent your network, that's not money. The distribution of Bitcoin in a public setting and with a universal forgetful function, and no one had the ability to pre-mine or be ahead of anyone else and create an unfair advantage. Like when these people bring up these false equivalencies, well, Bitcoin's owned by, it's like, but literally structurally, it's not. It was completely available. That they posted the white paper months before it went live. You had the ability to use it. Anyone could have mined Bitcoin. with a very, very, very simple CPU back in the day. Simply because you didn't take advantage of a public offering doesn't mean that it was a closed offering. It doesn't mean that someone hit Control P and made 100 billion tokens, you know?
Yo, my fellow Bitcoin lovers, have I got something specifically curated for you? The Deep Dive is Bitcoin Magazine's premium markets intelligence newsletter. This isn't some pay group selling buy and sell signals. No, this is a premium Bitcoin analysis led by Dylan LeClaire and his team of analysts. They break down in an easily digestible way what is happening on chain, in the derivatives markets, and in the greater macro backdrop context for Bitcoin. This newsletter turns volatility into a joke. So hit up members.bitcoinmagazine.com and use promo code podcast for 30% off the deep dive. That's members.bitcoinmagazine.com, promo code podcast for 30% off. Divorce your paid group and learn why Bitcoin is the ultimate asset by Dylan and his team. My fellow plebs, the Bitcoin conference is back. Bitcoin 2022, April 6th through the 9th, is the ultimate pilgrimage for the Bitcoin ecosystem. The Bitcoin conference is the biggest event in all of Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. We're leveling up and making this bigger and better than ever. I'm talking straight to the moon with the 4-day-long festival in the heart of Miami at the Miami Beach Convention Center. This has something for everyone. Whether you're a high-powered Bitcoin entrepreneur, a core developer, or a Bitcoin newbie, Bitcoin 2022 is the ultimate place for you to be with your people and celebrate and learn about the Bitcoin culture. So make sure to go to b.tc/conference to lock in your official tickets and use promo code Satoshi for 10% off. You want more off? Pay in Bitcoin and you'll receive $100 off general admission and $1,000 off Whale Pass. Those are stackable. So go to b.tc/conference and attend the best conference in Bitcoin history.
Yeah, it's important to point out that anyone can still mine Bitcoin today. I mean, whether you can do it competitively is another story, but if you have access to internet and a source of power, you can get it done.
Yeah, and anyone...
I know plenty of people who just do it recreationally and they just eat the cost. I don't recommend it, but if you're into it, it's open. It's there for you. And
you can validate and confirm your own transactions with exceptionally little onboarding cost, exceptionally little. And I think Voorhees said something like that. There was some comment about how Web3 allows you to participate in the network with zero cost, and it's like, well, I mean, I guess I don't really think so, but you know, you can download Bitcoin Core and validate a node with you know, a pretty minimal amount of bandwidth, a pretty minimal amount of hardware requirements. The Bitcoin state chain, you know, the mempool is a linear. It's not even really growing. I mean, it's not expanding. The growth rate is not exponential. Whereas these proof of stakes databases that are, you know, Turing complete and using more complicated amounts of data storage, are literally exponentially growing, and they're becoming harder and harder and harder for the average person to be able to run a node and to confirm consensus on their own. And that's really what we're trying to do here, is that we're all trying to uphold and be our own economic node. And these chains are not going to be able to scale. Blockchain is not necessarily a fantastic technology, and it's not magic. You know, it's not this magic wand that everyone likes to pretend that it is, that these marketing fields like to pretend it is. It's a kind of clunky database, and you want to use it for very specific, simple purposes. And to have a ledger that's very basic, you know, like Bitcoin, that's not going to become unbelievably exponentially out of control, you know, of how much data is stored in each block. I mean, yeah, it's you want small blocks. You want simple storage databases. You don't want to be, you know, it makes no sense to hold people use blockchain as if where you're gonna store like your video files and this and blah blah blah, and it's like,
Yeah,
nope.
you're gonna open your doors with it. You're gonna start your car with a blockchain. Listen, you be waiting out there in the cold. I'm from the Midwest. You're gonna die in the cold if you're waiting on the blockchain to start your car.
And there are
there,
that makes sense where it's like use decentralized identification systems or single seal proofs. There are so many other ways to access and achieve these problems that are tangible, but a lot of the Web3 system is sort of creating solutions for problems that don't really exist. And I know that's a little bit easy of a thing to say, but it's kind of true. Whereas the solution that Bitcoin is offering is a very serious problem that people don't have trust in financial systems. It offers such an extreme, unbelievable solution to an unbelievably important problem that humanity has dealt with forever. I mean, the earliest examples of the written language in humanity was literally 4 ledgers for economic activity and volatility between parties. I don't think that's an accident that we developed that, because there's so much innate biology to sort of capitalism and economic activity in humans. It's a very biological thing, and our ability to communicate in the linguistic structures that we created to express volatility in economic ways. That's a problem that we've had for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. The problem that proof of stake is solving is not solving a problem. It's recreating the problem without.
This is look, best case scenario. I mean, these people are trying to scam you. What's worse is, or arguably worse, I mean, they're ignorant of the damage that they're causing and the real property and wealth of other people that they're messing with. But there is no need to reinvent Bitcoin. We already have it. It already guarantees us our property rights. There's no other use for a blockchain right now. There's no, and that's not to eschew innovation completely. I'm happy to have it, but those markets don't even compete with Bitcoin. You got to understand, those are completely different asset classes. They have nothing to do with what we're trying to accomplish here, even on this show. So it's important to dispel those sort of centralized, I would just call them thought experiments. They're not offering any technology that's gonna last. They've come and gone for the past 12 years, loads of them, and they'll continue to trend towards zero on Bitcoin terms.
Yeah, I want to be really, really like upfront about this. It is not because I'm being dismissive because I haven't done the work or looked into these projects. I didn't get into Bitcoin and then just go, everything's stupid and it's all dumb and it's worthless. Like quite the opposite. I literally wrote a proof of stake white paper. I thought it was such a genius idea, and I thought it was, oh my goodness, this is going to be amazing. Because I have I work with a couple of nonprofits. I have sort of a philanthropic background. And I came up with this whole idea of we could do net zero sum donations, and we could take someone's money and put it in a proof of stake system and then use the yield and use that yield for a year and then give them back the donation at the end of the year. And it'd be this amazing. And I wrote this whole paper. I was very excited about it. And now I look back on it and it's like, you literally described a Ponzi scheme. Like that is what a Ponzi scheme is by definition.
Yeah.
It's not that I'm dismissive of these things because I'm not a coder. And there's a lot of stuff that I'm still learning, every day. I was deep diving into some of Shinobi stuff last night and was just like, I don't really understand how these federation chains work, but it's so amazing. But it's not because I'm ignorant or because I'm just poo-pooing this stuff or because I hate people or I hate innovation. It's like, no, I've done the work. I've thought about it. I've wrote about it. I've invested in it. I put money into it, and then I learned about it, and I grokked Bitcoin harder and harder and harder. And it drove me away from that stuff. Like I am a reformed shitcoiner. It's not because, I was ignorant and I didn't want to let that stuff, I gave it a chance, a very sincere chance. So that's where I'm at today. Yeah. And the water's warm and you can always sell your coins and we're here for you to help you.
Yeah. We've got about 10 minutes left. I'll just say, They're there. They're always going to be there. I mean, it's important to separate the signal from the noise there. I think important innovation is happening on Bitcoin. But at the same time, I don't believe that too much innovation has to happen. My property's secure. It'll continue to be secure. I can generate, plenty of wealth through Bitcoin, just buying and holding. I'm more than happy to do that for the rest of my time, for my family. That doesn't mean that innovation around the world has to stop, but I think that Web3 is a little quick to pursue basically all of the traps that one who's new to crypto comes into. They're trying to get rich quick. They're trying to get rich quick without putting in, proof of work.
Lunches. No such thing.
Yeah, free lunches. There's an unforgeable costliness to Bitcoin that none of these other applications admit or undergo themselves. And I realize they have their own forms of mining and coin burning and all these elaborate schemes. But I'm convinced that much of this like techno babble is just to draw people in and give them the joy of having something to learn and read and something weird to be into, and the feeling that, oh, I'm here first. I'm the first one to get this crypto JPEG. And it's like, listen, we've all been there. You're not the first. You're being played. Those are scams. You're at risk for not only to get rug pulled, but you're liable, if you're dropping these ICOs. I mean, there's going to be legal repercussions for this eventually. They're going to catch up to you.
100%.
You know what I mean?
And it's not, I think this is a misunderstood thing too, where I think people are like, oh yeah, Bitcoiners, they like LARP, that they like decentralized finance, and then they cheer on government regulation. It's like, no, I don't want any of my friends or any of these people to get hurt. I think it should be a free market and you should be able to do what you want to a degree, right? But at the same time, it's like the Howey test is pretty straightforward. Like, these are securities. Like it's pretty black and white. And we now have a Bitcoiner in the SEC, or a few now. Gary Gensler is a Bitcoiner. I've taken his court. Like, he gets, he has said, is a security. XRP is a security. And it's not that I want like these people to get hurt. I don't want anyone to get hurt. But like, if you're investing and like we just know now, and they've given out enough information, they've said enough, there's been enough of us screaming for so long, being like, protect your assets. We are going into a deflationary world. There is a huge transition happening. Protect your wealth. Do it now for the future, for your generation, for yourself. It's not because I want to see ETH go down. I don't want to see these NFT kids get hurt. I don't. I want to see them make a ton of money and put it into Bitcoin and make really cool infrastructures that help the world, make art, live beautiful lives and make the world a better place. I want to see that. I don't want to see people get hurt, and I don't want to see government overreach causing it. But at the same time, it's like, well, they're giving you a really long time to get out of this stuff. And if you're still into it now, when the day of reckoning comes, like, I don't want you to come and say, like help us. It's like, no, we warned you out of love, like
we had someone actually in the comments sell like 5 ETH from listening to the show. I was pumped about that. So if you're still in Bitcoin and crypto, if you're still in crypto altcoins, it might be time to sell. I want to get to this last quote real quick, Mark, because we got about 8 minutes left. So George's strange handle, but you can find them. They've got like a little pig as their profile picture on Twitter. Says, what, if any, do you see venture capitalists? What role, if any, do you see venture capitalists playing in a truly decentralized world? Participation in open incentives like everyone else? To which Jack Dorsey responded, take their massive profits and fund true FOSS that they've benefited so much from. And that's just what Jack did. He opted out of that system and went full Bitcoin developer lead on us, which is amazing.
Yeah, I mean, there's also this thing that I think a lot of, I keep saying kids as if I'm not a kid, but like, I think a lot of kids sort of don't get that. It's like, oh, if you're rich, you're bad, or like having money means that you're a bad person. And it's like, no, a lot of these people earned money in good ways, or they offered a service that was legitimately tangible and that people needed, and they solved a problem for people. Like, I have no problem with Jack being a billionaire. Like, I don't. I sure.
No.
I think that, like, you know, these people that have money are going to need to adapt or die. You know, join us or die. And yeah, we need money inflowing into Bitcoin. But we, you know, because that there is this sort of like, you know, what is it? Demand elastic supply, predictable, you know, sort of function of Bitcoin. It's like it's much more important to have a whole bunch of plebs DCAing in and buying up the available supply that's coming in than it is for these huge purchases of nation states or central banks or yada yada. Like quite literally, the incentive structure does actually, you know, help the steady, slow, small buyers versus these lump sum buyers. So, but like, yeah, VCs aren't going away. It's still an economic structure, and you should, if you have Bitcoin, you should invest in open source projects, and you should use it to make yourself a stronger economic node and make the system stronger.
And why is that open source stuff is important? Because we can verify without trusting what is going on. You can verify that you don't have corrupted software. You know, you can get yourself a cold card. You know, get some Bitcoin. Like, all of these things are like infinitely verifiable, and just
yeah, where you,
it's nice because what's that?
I was going to say, like, where you spend your money is where you vote, and we all know that. But it's much more important now with Satoshis. Like, where you spend your Satoshis is where you want to see growth. Think of it as like planting seeds or whatever. And so, yeah, a bunch of money into these systems that are just going to recreate bad incentive structures, shame on you. And if you put your money and your Satoshis into things that are going to build up structures that are for the people first, and those are the ones that are going to be open source, everyone can validate, there are no corruptible hidden incentive structures in it, we're going to see a better world.
Yeah, you've got to vote with your capital. I mean, I think it's a really misguided and like immature. I mean, and I mean that with no offense. I think people just come to the world, you know, it's a tough time out there. They don't have anything, and they just end up like hating rich people. I mean, I've been there, I get it, but you don't need to hate all rich people. I mean, you should strive to accumulate wealth for yourself so you can secure and alleviate future uncertainty for your family and friends. There are ethical ways of wealth accumulation, and Bitcoin is perhaps the most ethical of them. I mean, how you provide goods and services that the market values, and you swap that value for your local currency, or if you're very lucky, you swap it for Bitcoin outright, and you hold on to that Bitcoin. And there you have it, ethical wealth creation, and you're going to be the top 1% one of these days. So if you eschew and just hate on, you know, rich people, I mean, I think you'd remain forever poor. It's a very odd thing to hate, in my opinion.
The blind vilification of the rich is a division otherification tactic that is being used by our, you know, sort of the elites to divide us, and that there are good people that make money and do good things, and there are bad people that aren't good, that insider trade on congressional news and then write legislation and not get in trouble for it, you know. And this otherification and vilification of the rich blindly is really dangerous. There are good rich people, there are terrible rich people, there are good poor people, and there are bad poor people.
Yeah, I think even that's a generalization. I would say most of us are morally nuanced. And at any given time, we're either doing something that's a net good for society or bad for society. So
bad is a.
I wanted to shout out real quick. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Mark. As we're winding down here, it's someone said they sold their BitConnect, which I'm happy to hear. They said that in the comments just listening to us. I hope you sold it and bought some Bitcoin. Oh, it was a joke? Okay. I didn't follow through on that. It just said, that's it, I'm selling my BitConnect.
Yeah, sell your BitConnect 4 years ago. You might have made money.
We've got a couple minutes left. Any closing remarks, Mark?
Closing remarks. Yeah, I mean, again, I think that, you know, there's definitely a tendency to say a lot of like hard, unnuanced things and on a lot of these platforms, which I think is really fun. Twitter especially, like, it sort of narrows you down and you have to be very tunnel vision. And I would say, you know, as not financial advice, like, definitely trust your instincts over everything and do what you think is right for yourself. I think that that's what you should do. But really make sure that if you're listening to someone and you're investing in someone or someone's product, that you really understand what they have to gain from you participating in it or not. And I think Bitcoiners in general have a much more open-hearted, there's so many of us that have been around for a long time that we get, a little bit wealthy and have ability to spend our time doing what we want. And what do? Spend our entire time educating people and trying to onboard people onto the soundest, most decentralized for the people money that's ever existed. And I think that that's a really important distinction from a lot of these Web3 sort of situations, is that a lot of us are here because we think it's right ethically. And so we're going to spend our time onboarding as many people as possible. So everything's not as black and white as it is on Twitter or the internet. There is nuance, but why is someone preaching something to you? Why am I here telling you what I think is right? It's because I want you to win. I want you to succeed and make art and have a family and be a lover and make the world a better place. I don't care about you pumping my bags or not.
Yeah. Once again, I mean, once you might come for the number go up, and that's fine and good. We're all reformed, fiat coiners, if not shit coiners. But yeah, stay for the Bitcoin. Stay to fight the good fight, guys. Bitcoin versus the world. Shout out Limited Supply Co. Shout out Bitcoin Magazine store. Go get yourself some swag. Get yourself some print magazines. Get some education. Get the articles. Try our 21 Days for Bitcoin course. Buy tickets to the Bitcoin conference. We have so many good, valuable products here that are worth parting with some of your hard-earned wealth to, not only give you an education, but to give you job opportunities, to give you the opportunities to meet people who think like you or think unlike you, just to meet and network. I never would have met Mark here if it wasn't for Bitcoin. So, thank God for Bitcoin. Thank God for small Bitcoin companies, Limited Supply Co., Bitcoin Magazine, all kinds of great, Cold Card I'm shilling on here constantly, all kinds of great products and services coming out of Bitcoin, guys.
Absolutely. Well said. Yeah, super happy to be here. Always really incredibly thankful for the platform. I love Bitcoin Magazine and everyone that I've connected through it. And this fight is far from over. I think Bitcoin will win, but join us, help the fight, and let's make the world a better place.
Yeah, guys, log out of Web3, and we're just plug into Bitcoin, go about your life. No reason to get activity bias or get too sidetracked, guys. Look for the signal, and Mark is a great source of signal. Go read Mark's articles on bitcoinmagazine.com. Come watch him here on the live show. I'm gonna get him on here a lot more for sure. So yeah, thanks for joining us today, man.
Absolutely, my absolute pleasure. Yeah.